do need to be in your spot that you were in yesterday, right? So group 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. If you weren't here yesterday, just hold off for a second, but please be in your correct group for this thing. I'm sorry? What? That's okay. Be in your group anyway. You still need to vote as a jury for the other issues. Take a minute to okay, remind yourself about your arguments that you're going to make. We're going to finish these 3 things, and then we'll see how we're doing as far as time is concerned.
It's filming.
Nice. Melissa's here. Is Durka here? Where?
I don't think you're
Not here. Eric? Yep, you're here. Sophia Hansen? Okay. Taylor Johnson?
She is a conflict.
Sydney Lind? Zach?
Who are you with?
Gage, talk to me. Star? Mal? Catherine Rushton? Catherine? Okay. James? You know, when I say to mark your name here, I meant it. Dirk is here. Hey, Dirk, where's your phone? Okay. And you're still breathing? Wow. Anthony, I saw him. There you are. Will Shader? Kaya Stearns. Hannah Thorson.
What actually happened? You don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so very good. Yeah, let's take a minute to address your paper. My friends, your paper is your final.
What?
Your paper is your final.
In class?
Sorry?
Are we writing more in class?
When does that do?
Oh.
Well, ultimately, it'd be due the last day of class, so that would be January the 16th, which is a Wednesday. We will be working on it in class. Now, I didn't say it's your only final. There is also another part, but part of the mission of this class as an elective social studies class is, are you able to pick your own topic, conduct your own research, and write an argumentative paper based on that research? And that's what you're doing. Okay. So understand that that's part of your final, and that has an impact on your grade, right? Now, there is another part of your final, which we will worry about later. Okay. Second thing I'll say, and then I'll call on you. And that is, somebody asked me, like, okay, how do you want us to footnote exactly? So there are a couple different options. Option 1 is you attach the article itself, you staple it to the paper you've written, and then when you quote it, at the end of the quote, you draw SpongeBob, or you draw a happy face, or a star, or a number, or a letter. I don't care. Something that at the end of the quote is a symbol. And then you put that same symbol on the article itself right by the quote. So that I could say, oh SpongeBob. Okay, where's SpongeBob? There it is. Do they match? They sure do. You are not guilty of plagiarism. Plagiarism. That's it. Okay? That's an option. Or you do the correct MLA way to footnote. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, why don't you know what I'm talking about? We've gone over it. It's number 6, I think, on that little checklist. Right? You research 4 articles, supposedly. I think number 6 is the correct bibliographic information. Highlight that, paste it. Right on your paper.
Do
Okay.
you want that right after the photo at the end of the paper?
Are you right at the end of the course? Yeah. Okay. You. Well, it's kind of hard to. Okay, so Ms. Larkowski just asked, there's no late penalty. Does that apply to the final? Well, the class is over. So it can't be late. The class is over. So it's okay. It's either handed in then or it's not handed in. Right? There's no late work. That's true. Because it's not even going to be accepted. When the class is over, it's done. So be done. Be done. Okay. Any other questions on that? And I promise, even tomorrow my plan is get a debate in and attack the next paragraph. That's what we're doing tomorrow. Today, we're going to finish these 3 scenarios and then attack some other things that have to do with race. Is your hand in the air? No. Can we put our phones away? Really very away. Do you mean it? Then it's all better. Okay. All right. So allow me to remind you what's going on here. You are all jury. We are in the punishment phase of a trial. I'm going to read the situation, and then the maximum punishment team will argue a maximum punishment proposal. The minimum punishment team will argue a minimum proposal. You are all judges. Judges are the things that render punishments, not verdicts. Juries render verdicts. Judges render punishments. Now, in some states, the jury can recommend a punishment, but we're not going to go there. Okay. Here we go. The guy's name is Harold Reynolds. He's 25 years old. What does that mean? Whatever you want it to mean. He's caught with 10 grams of crack cocaine. A gram, if you want to know what is a gram, a lot? I don't know the answer. Anyone know what's a gram? Like in terms of, in relation to like a pound.
8 ounces.
A gram is 8 ounces?
No, because 500 grams equals like a pound, right?
I think it's 8 ounces.
I don't think so.
12?
8 ounces is like a half a
Gram
can
is
of pop.
about a paper clip. Yeah, you're right. I think it is. 10 grams is like a paper clip. No, 10 grams is like 10 paper clips.
I think 1 gram is 1.
Let's agree that it's really, really small.
Yeah, it is really small.
Okay.
It's not
A gram,
10 grams,
he
it's
just
10
said 10 grams is a 200th of a pound. So he's caught with 10 grams of a version of cocaine called crack cocaine. Does that mean anything? We'll see. He is convicted of possession and intent to sell. What they call it up here is trafficking. Yes, dear. A dose? You mean like a hit? I don't currently know. Okay, one last thing to throw in there, and this might not matter at all, but he happens to be African American. Okay, so the maximum punishment team, it's all you. Where is that? Is it this team? Just stay there. Fine. Is that this team?
No, we're
Minimum.
maximum.
Where's my maximum team? Okay, everyone listening, please stand. If you're speaking, go ahead. Throw the book at this guy. Nice and loud.
So we believe that he should get 20 years in prison. That would be 2 years per gram. And he is 25 years old, so he well knows right from wrong. So he knows that this is illegal and that he should not be in possession and selling the substance. And he is putting himself and others in harm's way because he's trying to get them hooked. And my guess is that if he's selling it, he's probably on it himself.
Okay, so it sounds like 20 years. And what's really nailing him is the idea that he's intending to sell. Go ahead.
And it says his intent was like to traffic illegal drugs, and like we don't know if that was like within the United States or like across like different countries. So if it was like across the border, it could be a transnational crime.
Ooh, very impressive. All right, good. Thank you. All done? One thing I want to remind you of is you are able to use what's called precedent. You can say he should get this punishment because look at what happened here. So now I don't know if this applies because he was convicted of murder. Okay, minimum. So 20 years minimum. Go.
So we believe for minimum punishment, he should get 5 years in prison.
Will you pause for a sec?
Yeah.
Continue.
Okay, so we believe he should get 5 years in prison and 5 years probation on the idea that he's still very young, like considering he's only 25, like he has the potential to change, and like we don't know, maybe he grew up in a family like with low income and like this is his way of like correcting that, so maybe it's like more of a psychological thing than like a bad intent thing. So yeah, he has a lot of
Breaking Bad.
He has a lot of potential to change, and I feel like 5 years on probation, like along with getting him like treatment and like if he is on drugs himself, then 5 years probation like could really do some good for him and maybe make him learn something from this.
Okay, very good. All right, so we got 5 and 5. So 5 years behind bars and then 5 years of probation or 20. Any questions before we vote? You are voting. All right, it's one or the other. Now, these two are not voting, so you guys are not voting. You guys are not voting. You are either voting for 20 years or 5 and 5. Okay, and then I'll tell you exactly what actually happened. So how many are going for the 20? 20 years behind bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Max 20. 6. How many are going for the 5 and 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 16 to 6, right? He got 10 years, 1 year per gram. And then he also got another 2 months. I'm really not sure why. Okay. I will withhold comment, and you will understand why I'm withholding comment until the next scenario is talked about. Okay. So let's move on. We've got John. He's 22. So comparatively speaking, he's a little bit younger than Harold. 500 grams. Not 10 grams, 500 grams. So it's a lot more. This is powder cocaine. Does that matter? I don't know. He is convicted of the same thing. Possession, intent to sell, something else that's different. He happens to be white. Does that matter? Let's see. Okay. Maximum punishment team. You're up. Is that this?
Yeah. Can I talk? Yeah.
You bet you can.
Okay, so we're saying we give this guy.
Will you pause for a second?
We give this guy
Need
80
you pause for a second.
years.
Hold on.
in
Hold
prison.
on. Hold on. Hold on. Is it the same table I'm waiting for? Go ahead.
Okay, 80 years in prison or 60 with chance of parole afterwards.
80 years would take him to 102 years old.
Yes.
60 would take him to 82. So when he turns 82, he has a chance of getting out.
Yep.
All right. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
That's our offer.
That's max. Okay, very good. Minimum team. What say you? Nice and loud.
reason?
Okay, so we said 10 years of prison with, if he has good behavior, go down to 5 years. Rehab and community service hours with possibility of parole.
Okay, well, the parole you already mentioned. Well, you did because you said 10 years down to 5 with good behavior. That's what parole is.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so let's say he's in for 5. Then what?
Then he goes to rehab.
He goes to rehab.
Yep. Make sure he's all clean and he's like not doing anything if he was. And
Okay.
then do community service.
How much community service?
That
These are measured in hours.
that would depend on the rehab facility. If I think he is doing really, really well, and etc. Whatever, they can do like maybe minimum of 100 and maximum of 500.
All right. Okay, so it sounds, let me sum up. 5 to 10, 5 if he's good behavior, he's out. And then from 100 to 500 hours of community service with also a requirement to go to rehab. Or 60 to 80 years in prison.
Not changing it. We're set. We never got to say a reason.
Okay, voting for one or the other. How many are going 60 to 80? You don't get to vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many are going to go with the 5 to 10? The rest.
500 grams of cookies.
Okay.
500 is like a pound.
5 to 10? You got 10 years.
Here's what actually happened, and this is kind of interesting.
No, you could.
He got 7 years.
That's not.
So
You got 7 years.
we have to be careful here because we can't know for sure if this is what's going on, but the age is about the same. The gender is about the same. They both were possessed. They both had intent to sell. They both were talking about cocaine. 2 things are different. One is the race. This guy's black, this guy's white. Did that play a factor in the punishment? And then the second thing is, well, there's 3 things different.
Yeah.
The second thing that's different is the amount. This guy had way more than this guy, and yet this guy was punished less. The third thing is the form of the drug. This happens to be one of those ways where we can say what is the preference of certain groups. And crack happens to be the delivery method favored by African Americans. Powder happens to be the delivery method favored by whites. Do we have, and I am not telling you yes or no, I'm letting you make the decision. Do we have a criminal justice system that more severely punishes because of that word right there? He had way less, but he's black, and yet he's punished more. Any comments? Go ahead.
Well, it depends if it was inner city crime. Because inner city crime, like you get more, it's more of a punishment.
Okay, so Ian is saying inner city crime. Okay, you're bringing up another factor. Guess where most African Americans live? Inner city, right? Is that a factor? This is sort of a cart before the horse sort of thing. Are they punished more severely because they're black, or are they punished more severely because they're the ones committing the crimes? Or maybe they're just bad at it and they get caught is another factor, okay? If this is making you uncomfortable, this is what we're going to be talking about until this class is over. Race. More thoughts. Go ahead.
The white guy, he was a bit younger, and he was barely above like the legal drinking age. It's like having that, like.
Why does that matter?
Because like if you're barely old enough to drink, like how are you getting this kind of?
Your comment that you're barely old enough to drink makes me think about it. That's like saying you're barely pregnant. You either are or you're not. You either are old enough to drink or you're not. You don't get to say, well, I'm barely old enough to vote. You're old enough to vote. The end. And are you saying there's a significant difference between 25 and 22?
I don't even know why I brought that up. That wasn't even my point.
Just making us think a little bit. More thoughts. Go ahead.
And what judge punishes people more severely than the other?
Very good. I'm glad you said that. That the only way we can make, well, I shouldn't say that. A way that we can make a conclusion is by saying, well, was the judge the same? No, there were different judges. So that's fair to say. Very good. Had it been the same judge, then we'd have some questions, right? Very good. Anybody else?
I have a different
Go ahead.
point. It depends on where they're selling to, like if they're trying to sell across borders or if you're like.
Okay, well,
If
let me
one
put
state
that one to
deserves-
bed. This is not a transnational crime.
Okay.
This is. Did you know 98%, about 98% of crimes committed occur within a state? Right? 98% of trials are state trials. Sometimes people cross a border from one state to another. Okay, now you have a federal trial, but it's pretty rare. Okay, very good. Let's end it with our last scenario. How are we doing? We're doing perfectly. All right, here we go. Bernie Madoff
Let's go.
is convicted of theft, but we aren't talking about robbing a gas station. This is another level. He created an elaborate scheme where he got people to give him money that they thought he was putting into a stock market. He actually was keeping the money, and then he paid back some of the investors with money he got from other people. Does anyone know what this is called? It's called a pyramid scheme. This is a pyramid scheme, and this guy was a master. He ended up stealing 65, and that's not a misprint, billion dollars. $65 billion. And by the way, some of these people are famous. They are actors. You know some of them. Matt Damon was one. This, by the way, this is true. All of these are true. Okay? So, some people, anyone know what an IRA is? Someday you're going to retire, and you will have worked 30, 35, 40 years, and you're going to put little pieces of money away throughout your career. And some of those people that worked at the Ford factory gave their money to this guy, and he stole it. And now they have no money in their retirement. Okay? And here's what's interesting too. Let's say his wife says, I didn't know about it. And let's say they stole the money, and then she buys a house. She buys a car. She buys a horse. And she says, I didn't know anything about it. Does she get to keep the horse?
No.
Does she get to keep? He stole it. Does she get to keep it? Okay, so things to think about. Maximum punishment team, you're up. Where are we? Let's hear it. What does this guy deserve?
He has to pay back all of the money, and if he can't, all of his money gets paid back to them, and then he goes bankrupt. And he gets 50 years in prison, and after 25, he has a chance for parole.
So 25 to 50, and he has to pay back every dime, assuming he cannot afford it. His assets are liquidated and then sold to all of the victims. And there were hundreds. All right? Follow that? 25 to 50, complete payback. If he can't, liquidate all of his assets as close as possible. All right? Minimum?
Okay. So we gotta look at this. Like they consentedly or they gave their money with their consent. So technically they're kind of at fault for this. And he should only get 65 hours of community service, and half of the money that he made goes to charity, and the rest of it he keeps. And what this really comes down to is the government putting too many restrictions on the economy. Thank you.
Yeah.
He gets applause for that?
65 hours.
All right, so we got 25 to 50 in prison or 65 hours of community service, and he gets to keep half the money.
Yep. To be fair, 65 hours is quite a
All right, how many of you are going with maximum? You are required to raise your hand now. All right. I'm not even asking for the minimum. The punishment you came up with was light. He is rotting in prison right now. He was sentenced to 150 years in prison and ordered to pay $17.9 billion. One of the things that it happened in New York, one of the things the state of New York acknowledged was the spending that his wife engaged in. She didn't know. How are you supposed to get that money back?
How did she spend that much still?
Well, right. I mean, she bought a car. The state confiscates the car and resells it and then takes the money and ends up paying the victim. You're never going to get your money back. You can't. You can never recuperate all of the money. Okay. By the way, if you're ever wondering about this 150 years, does that mean once the guy passes away that they let him rot in there until 150 years? And the answer is no, they do not. It's 150 years or you die, whichever comes first, which you'll probably die.
Is that a year per victim?
Okay. Actually, I don't know. I don't know the answer. How did the judge come up with that punishment? Any other thoughts before we shift to one more slide here? Okay. So I introduced, what I want you to pay attention to are these two things, because this is what's interesting. Okay. So we had Harold, who's 25, with 10 grams of crack. And we have John, who's 22, with 500 grams of powder. What is the difference? Now, I will tell you this, that what I'm about to show you is dated because yesterday, Congress passed a new criminal law which addresses this very issue. So the next sociology class that I teach next semester, I will have to revisit this and see if this continues to be true. Okay, but what they'll show you is things that are measured in things that were true 3 years ago. Okay, so the average price of crack cocaine is $100. This is per gram, $150 per gram for crack, $110 per gram for powder. So think about that. Let's go back to this.
Oh my God.
10 times 150, it's 1,500. 110 times 500 is, I don't know.
I want to figure it out.
The federal penalty for trafficking, that means intent to sell. You're trafficking. You're taking it out. Okay, 55,000. Okay. Okay, so here it is. You need to have 5 grams on you to trigger a mandatory punishment of at least 5 years in prison. You got to have 5 grams on you of crack. Powder, you have to go with 500 grams. So again, the question I have, and I'm throwing it out to you, is why? What is the difference?
Is it because they know that African American people don't like the powder more? And that's why?
Well, I'm allowing you to throw out that as a possibility. That is the reason. And again, relax. I am not saying our criminal justice system is racist. I'm allowing you to come to that conclusion if you want, though. This is the preference of African American. This is the preference of white American. And is it possible that we punish because of the race as a factor? Now, there is something else that's possible. Do any of you know the addictive quality of crack versus powder? Is if one of you were able to prove, well, crack is much more potent, like 100, it would have to be about 100 times more potent for you to be able to say, like, see, it's not racist. It's just that crack is more dangerous than powder. So,
Yeah, I was about to say the effect on the body.
yeah, I don't know the answer. Does anyone know the answer?
I think crack is more addictive.
Is it okay? You think it is? Is it 100 times more addictive?
I don't know that.
Yeah, I don't know either. Okay. The punishment for possession, the federal punishment, 5 years is the minimum in a federal trial for 5 grams possession. So a year per gram for crack. 1 year for any amount of power of race. No, I'm not. I'm simply showing you statistics here. Okay. The average federal prison sentence is 10 years, 2 months, which is exactly what Harold got. I mean, exactly. For crack, 7 years, 1 month for powder. Now these are in 2007. So why? What's the difference? Why? Again, it's possible that crack just is more addictive. It's more dangerous. I don't know. And I bet you could figure this out. What they've measured is what percent? 82% of people convicted of trafficking or possession of crack happen to be African American. 72% of people that have possession or the intent to traffic powder are either Hispanic or white. Reach your own conclusions, though. I'm not. Now, I will tell you this. The bill that was passed yesterday was based on these statistics, and I believe, is attempting to address this and say, no, this isn't fair.
What could they change?
Well, I don't know. I haven't been able to research it. That's a really good question. I will try and do my best to find out what was changed. I think they're bringing in treatment, but a lot of times these people, they can't help it. So rather than punish, maybe we should help them out a bit. Right. Or the idea, I'd say about 15, 20 years ago, the rage was 3 strikes. So if you were convicted that third time for any sort of anything, life in prison, the end. So you could be convicted 3 times of possession of whatever. You spend your rest of your life in prison. And then I think the law that was passed yesterday, the bill, sorry, Trump has not signed it yet. I think he will. He said he will. And by the way, people on the left and the right are widely praising this bill. Democrats and Republicans both are praising the passage of this bill. They're saying it's a good bill. Some people don't like it because they feel like you got to punish these people and stop treating. Anyway, the new bill is an acknowledgement that maybe there's some things in our criminal justice system that are questionable. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we shut her down for today? Obviously, we can't have a debate today, but I promise debate tomorrow will happen. Maybe 2.
Yeah, I still haven't gone yet.
Yes,
You're bluffing.
the stand your ground is still out there, and then 1 more is still an issue. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You can shut her off for 2-3 minutes.
You keep like psyching me out. You're like, oh, you're going tomorrow. Oh, just kidding. Oh, haha, you're going tomorrow. Oh, just kidding. Like I could still like not have my presentation done and I'd be fine. Like I was like stressing out so much about not having it done, and now I'm just like
I was stressing out because I wrote the script, but I didn't print it off. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna print this off like now. And then I'm like, no, I don't.
yeah.